Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. We are very happy to have you guys with us as usual. Of course, this is TFT Tinfoil Talk today. I am Chester C. Busby III. Very happy to have you. And yes, Eric is correct. Hi there, Chester Copyright Strike Busby III. Dude, we got three in a row. And we got it on a video which we paused through like 30 minutes of talking about it. And actually, I can even prove it to show exactly what they seem to want to copyright strike us about. Take a look at this. I'll show you. Look at that. So they actually paused the video, shows where we were in the wrong, right on that point where we were paused for a long time talking about it. Those Romulan or those Klingons, and of course Tank Fair made that great point. That's where they got us. They got us on Picard, of course, because don't you dare talk about our show ever. But three in a row. Isn't that awesome? And
Are
it's
you
starting to
are
pick
you
up.
showing? Are you showing anything? Because I don't see it on either screen.
I was showing it, yeah,
No, you were
yeah.
showing
It's
it.
it's
Okay.
showing it right here, no problem.
Oh,
But
okay, okay, okay.
it is funny. Of course, it makes I need to get in there and cut those things out and re-upload them, I guess. But it is funny that these big companies are constantly hitting people for trailers. Uh, excuse me. But it's such a stupid thing. People are talking about your trailers. People, it's free advertising, right? But this is the way they think. But Eric says I saw it. All right. Oh well. I don't know. We're not watching a trailer today, so this one should be fine. But three in a row. It's quite amazing. So what it was Cats, it was Picard, and what was the other one? What was the first day? Oh yeah, the Chris Evans. I'm going to save the Ethiopians. White Savior movie. That one,
Right.
right? But anyway, we're here to talk about conspiracy theories and stuff like that because, of course, this is TFT. We're very happy to have you guys with us here on Sunday, and a nice day to sit and talk about strange things. I think. Do we have anything we want to talk about before that, you guys?
I don't
My
know.
internet's cutting in and out, guys. And hi, everyone. Hi to the chat and to everyone who's listening. So I just want to throw out my conspiracy theory of genetics, and that is all these DNA stuff that you send out to get your testing and all that stuff.
Hmm.
The conspiracy theory that I got is that they're looking for the immortal gene, which only I think is like less than 10 people in the world have, and their blood in particular will never die. So that's what's going on. I think that's what the sweeping dragnet, so to speak, is going on.
Oh, that's
But
interesting.
if my internet comes and goes, you got my thoughts. Please expand.
I will expound upon it, but I think the simple thing with the genealogy test that they're doing, the heredity type DNA test, of course, one, they've made a market and people are always interested in that kind of thing, so there's money to be made. But actually, I'm sure there's some theories on looking at what they're looking for something particular, but mainly I know a little bit about this because I know when it started, and I have some friends that are involved in that project. The main thing they're trying to do is create the biggest and broadest breadth of understanding of the human genetics, actually. That's the base understanding. Now, is there something going on above that? I don't know, maybe. But in general, what they're trying to do is really understand human DNA. It's purely science, actually. The fact that they can make a little money along the way with it, I think, is great. The unfortunate thing is those genealogy tests are not very accurate, actually. you know, because they don't know. That's the kind of reason why they're collecting all that DNA. They're trying to get it. They're trying to understand it. One day they will. But Joe Maroney says, we peons aren't authorized to discuss their content. Only the ones they deem worthy can discuss their content and deliver the message to us from on high on stone tablets as commandments. That's probably true, dude. Thou shalt not talk smack about Picard. Oh, goodness gracious. Booster is some reason not in here, but over there. And he says, let's talk about my ear being gunked up and I need to have it vacuumed out. Huh? Goodness gracious. We got Mayor McCheese in here. That's a cool name. I can't wait. I'll be there. New Hero Comics. Hey, Hillel. How's it going, dude? The Immortal Gene. Uh-huh. When big entertainment wants our opinion, they'll give it to us. It's true. Yowza Comics says, "Greetings, Earthlings." Well, greetings to you, dude. So they can kill us. Goodness gracious, Hillel. If they are descendants of Genghis Khan, you're toast. Well, dude, there's a lot of descendants of Genghis Khan. Of course, you might find it interesting, Westerners, that his name is not Genghis Khan at all. It's too bad because it sounds cool. His name is actually Chinggis Khan. Chinggis Khan. It would be the way you pronounce it. But Genghis Khan sounds so much cooler, though, don't you think, Denali?
Yeah, and I mean Genghis Khan is really the title. It's not even his actual name.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But it's so I tend to go with Genghis Khan anyway because it just sounds cooler, even though it makes me cringe to myself every time I do it. Yowza Comics says maybe they can get actual DNA tests for Star Child Skull. Oh, it's interesting you mentioned that because they do have that actually. Matthew says, Chester Busby, hey, sorry, I haven't been able to catch the show lately. I've been busy with school. Hope all is well. Well, dude, you wouldn't have been able to catch the show, at least in replay, for the past three shows because each one of them have been copyright striked. We are successful. We exist. Hands up, everybody. Let's do a kumbaya. Let's do it. Let's do it. He's not the Messiah.
Oh.
He's a very naughty boy. All right. But anyway, before we get into that, Genghis Khan booster. But Denali, we have any kind of scraps of news to talk about today before we do get into our genetics conversation?
Well, I mean, we were talking about yesterday that they were going to make Thor a woman.
Yeah,
Boom, they did
they did.
with
Yeah.
Natalie Portman. Everybody screaming their head off. Um, in the little slight, I was looking at that panel. He also mentioned Kevin Feige mentioned after Phase 4, so around 2022, 23, they're bringing in the Fantastic Four and the Mutants into the MCU.
Yeah. They'll get to it
Yeah,
eventually. They got to take a little
yeah,
break. I expected that.
right.
Actually, I thought another more interesting thing. We knew you and I mentioned that the Lady Thor is
Oh
coming.
yeah,
We said this
oh
months
yeah,
ago, right?
oh yes, yes.
Yeah. But I thought the more interesting thing is how proud they were with Tessa Thompson saying that Valkyrie's gay. She's the king of Asgard, and she's gonna find her queen, baby. And yeah, I thought that was just wonderful. Natalie Portman as Lady Thor, boy, you could not get more epically comedic. I mean, that is awesome. It's purely awesome. Natalie Portman, this twig girl who exudes zero power in everything she does. It's perfect, dude. It's freaking perfect. Meme worthy from here to eternity. It's gonna be awesome. You know.
Well, I wonder if they're going to do the transformation where because a female Thor can't it's masked, so maybe they'll get when she's Jane, she'll be Natalie Portman. When she's Thor, it'll be a stunt double that actually looks like she can fight.
They could do that.
And
If we go back to the original Journey into Mystery, that's exactly what they did with Thor from the beginning. Actually,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So they'll bring it in. It's like, all right, we got female Thor. It's like, yeah, no, you don't have to do anything except be Jane, and then somebody else will wear the costume. Okay.
Well, there's a couple things here that's kind of interesting. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, Hillel says she's a senator. Okay, I get the joke. But Yowza Comic says lesbian scene with Lady Thor. Now, of course he's joking, but I don't know if he is though, because one of the
Mm-hmm.
things they made intentionally to say with the announcement of Lady Thor, even though Chris Hemsworth is in the movie, is that they say Thor's former love interest, and yet it's called Love and Thunder. So are we going to see a romance between she and Thor, or is something else going on? Why would they push the word former? I mean, they choose their words very, very closely, these people, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, that is that is an interesting statement. And we know Valkyrie will be in the movie, and we know she's all about finding her queen. hmm
Mm-hmm.
hmm I mean,
They're already. I mean, they're already trouting that Valkyrie is the first. female lesbian, LGBTQ whatever hero in the movies, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
right. Well, and then they're gonna point out, well, Jane always had her assistant Darcy around. Why do you think she has such a person next to
Well,
her?
but also
My God.
they really cucked out Thor hardcore in Endgame. I mean, you can't. I don't know that
Oh
you could
yeah.
cuck him harder, other than the
Yes, you
fact that
can.
having his lover had take another lover right in front of him.
Yep.
And I have a feeling that's exactly what's coming, guys.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
And then he loses his ability to hold the hammer again.
Mjolnir, yeah. Well, they
Mjolnir.
did bring Mjolnir back. One of the things that irked me in the end games, amongst many other things, was the fact that when he had Mjolnir in his hand, he threw it back to Captain America, who was carrying Mjolnir, and he says, "Here, you take the little one." Disrespecting Mjolnir like that. But so there you go. He doesn't deserve to hold it anyway. But more,
Yeah.
I mean, we're
There you go.
theorizing, but
That's no, that's Thor's former lover, Mjolnir,
Mjolnir, yeah.
turning back. Yeah, turning its back against Thor.
Well,
Fine then,
it.
jealousy.
I think probably what we'll actually see is more of them rekindling their romance. Him giving her the power because she's dying from cancer, and them going on some little adventure. I think it's going to be very softly done. It's not going to be anywhere near as harsh as the comic book did it. I'm pretty sure that's the way it's going to happen. They're going to come at this lightly, and the whole Valkyrie thing with her looking for her queen, it'll probably be some little side, little cut scene that's nothing, and because they love
Mm,
talking about this stuff, but
mm.
they don't actually commit to it, dude.
Oh
They
no.
don't.
You know what that means. Because they're doing the whole thing over again. And we kind of were railing against this months ago, which was, yes, it is my fault, Model 316. That we were saying they have already used all the good stuff from the past comics, that now they're entering current time and they have to use those. They don't have to, but they are using all the current crappy
Hmm.
storylines that we already foresaw,
Yeah,
which means we're going to get a Civil War 2, except we're having Captain Marvel versus Captain America,
I'm sure.
which will be Sam in this case.
Oh yeah, yeah. And yeah, no, and of course we're coming into wholly and fully into the Mary Sue DeConnick era is what we're coming into.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and it is what it is, guys. A lot of those things we talked about yesterday I think will come true. Hawkeye will certainly be his daughter. I mean, we'll see him and he'll pass the banner on. But to be fair, having a legacy character, I think is fine. It's a way to get away with it. We could see all kind of crazy things. I mean, someone was joking that they're going to make Bucky and Sam have a gay relationship in their buddy cop drama. And we laughed at it. But dude, they might. Bringing Loki out is gay, but he's kind of an androgynous fella anyway.
I mean,
But
history wise, he's been doing that as well, so it fits his character.
okay, well now let's talk about history wise. You can't take the past so many years of them force feeding us crap we don't want that we've been bitching about since day one and say it's canon. It's the same thing they did
Hmm.
with Doctor Who. It's like, oh, Doctor Who was presented as possibly a woman. Yeah, you set it up the year before.
Right,
That's
and I'm
not canon.
and I'm
That's
talking,
not
yeah,
canon.
and I'm not talking about Loki of the comics. I'm talking Loki of as the deity gods of the
Oh, I see.
Norse information. He does transform man to woman and has several children as a woman. Read the
Uh,
Norton stories. Is there? That's
Loki
what I was talking
Loki
about.
never births a child. Loki
Yes.
has many children. Most of
Hmm.
his children are monstrous. He's
Yeah.
basically Typhon, is what he is, and
Right.
his one of his main wives is Echidna, right?
Hmm.
From the if you look at it from the Greek point of view. But
Yeah.
anyway, Yowza Comics says hippie Hulk.
Hmm.
Now here, let me ask you a question, guys. Which thing in the end game offended you most? It's hard for me to choose. Right? Hippie Hulk was pretty bad. Captain America betraying everything he is, pretty damn bad.
Mm-hmm.
Thor being absolutely and completely cucked out, pretty bad. Captain Marvel coming in, destroying everything, and then them not having her destroy Thanos, which she obviously easily could do the way they brought her in, pretty bad. I don't know, dude. The list is long, right?
And you wonder why instead of watching 3 to 7 times like the Infinity Wars, everybody just watched once and were okay. That's good enough.
Yeah, no, no, I hated that movie. It's such a diametrically opposed opinion between Infinity War and Endgame for me. I loved Infinity War. I thought it was probably the best movie they've ever made. Endgame was a freaking train wreck. I can't stand it. But yeah, well, we've warmed up enough. George has
Yeah.
tried to make a comeback here. It's time, I guess, we got to jump into it, guys. So here we
All
go.
right.
Here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Now, let me give my first little spiel that I like to give spiels. Here we go. Today we're talking about genetic conspiracy theories. I suppose I should probably share with you, huh? Although this is a pretty short session, I'll just leave it as it is, actually. But we're talking about genetic conspiracy theories, and there are a lot of them. There's a lot of things we can talk about. Now, we never know how many people are to come and join us here for
Mm-hmm.
TFT, and with TFT, the format is we want everyone to come with their own thing and to present it and show it to you individually, and then we all chat about it. That's the whole thing with TFT. But we never know if we're going to get 2 people in here or 10 people in here. We don't know. But for what of course, I'm prepared myself to be able to talk about anything. But in general, what I'm going to talk about today is Mr. Lloyd Pye. Now, Lloyd Pye is a very interesting fellow. I found him long time ago. I can't remember how many, more than a decade, I'd say. But Lloyd Pye, he's not an academic per se, although he is a researcher and a writer. But he's not an official doctor, PhD Lloyd Pye, I don't think. But one thing that Lloyd Pye did I thought was very interesting was he
Mm-hmm.
started as a Sitchian. As far as Mr. Sitchin, who wrote the 12th Planet and basically translated a lot of those, early Sumerian tales into English, basically. Well, eventually it was in Jewish, Hebrew, and then it came into English. But he is a Scythian. He's one of a large group of Scythians initially, but he evolved away from, not away from that, but beyond that, I would say. And what he was looking into was pretty interesting. He was trying to understand what is the missing link. Ultimately, that was his core
Mm-hmm.
start, I think. Where is the missing link? What is the missing link? And along his journey, which he dedicated his life to, was what he found was pretty interesting stuff. First of all, just to kind of show you real quick, I put this together myself. I suggest you go find Lloyd Pye on the internet. I think YouTube probably has some. You can find it elsewhere as well. You go to his main website or what have you. Go watch one of those videos, and you'll have a much more in-depth look into it than I'm going to give you today. If we take a quick look here, say the Neanderthal versus the modern human, which I have two side by sides here. But the one on the right is a little easier to understand, I think. It's talking about all the differences between them. And what he came to find out with the Neanderthal and Homo erectus itself is, from his point of view, and there's a lot of science behind this too. This isn't just someone having an opinion, he did the hardcore science. Is the fact that the Neanderthal is very similar to a chimpanzee in its bone structure. And we know, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but through the paleontological and anthropological record, we find that there have been several moments in history where we had walking chimps. Meaning they weren't like they are today. They were actually walking erect like a human does. That was their standard mode of movement. So if you have this concept that humans are the only ones who ever walked erect from the primate family, this is not true. There's several times chimps have done this actually, and it's kind of curious why the modern chimp doesn't do it actually. But nevertheless, when you compare the bones of Neanderthal to a chimpanzee, they're nearly identical, right? And of course, when you compare the Neanderthals to the human, what he found in his study, and this has been corroborated by other people, is the fact that there isn't a missing link between Neanderthal and modern humans, because they're supposed to be a very close relative, right? Literally, our offshoot and their offshoot are literally linked not too long ago, if you look at evolutionary science or Darwinistic science. But in fact, there are dozens and dozens of links in between to get us from Neanderthal to the modern human body. Okay, rib cages, hips, feet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he goes into it in incredible depth, and it's a very convincing argument. Very convincing argument, actually. And of course, the Homo erectus being that of the gorilla. And also, he what he thinks is that those creatures are not connected to us directly because of a specific reason. And I'll get to that in a second. But of course, what he thinks those creatures are is this. He thinks they're basically, we still have Neanderthals or Homo erectus still walking around. And they're called Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, the abominable snowman, what have you. Of course, they're all over the place. Skunk apes. Every culture seems to
Mhm.
have some memory of these, and even some have some current understanding of them. And this is what he's proposing. And he puts out tons of information on the existence of Bigfoot. So if you're interested in Bigfoot as a conspiracy theory unto itself, there's a lot of good information from Lloyd Pye on that as well. It's a separate subject, but he does cover that quite intensely. But the interesting thing for me with this argument is when he really gets into the DNA. And he's done the hard work. He's done his work on it. He's done his research, and he's talked to a lot of geneticists. And we know that modern geneticists are finding several things that is very uncomfortable for them to talk about. And in general, they can't talk about it very much because they'll lose their job, right? But privately, they will talk about things and give information and stuff. And the things that's bothering them is the fact that, first of all, the idea that DNA was created out of some soup of chemicals hit by lightning is equivalent to you taking a handful of sand, throwing it up, and it magically falls down in the perfect shape of the Empire State Building. It's about the same odds, which means impossible, right? So this is really troublesome because now you're coming into a conversation of there's kind of impossible that DNA is not intelligently designed. Now, whatever you want to call that intelligence, there's some manner of intelligence behind that, and it's interesting that the higher level the scientist you're talking to, especially like high-end physics and plasma scientists, and of course geneticists themselves, they can't not believe intelligent design because of what they see in front of them. But what Lloyd Pye has done was he went a little deeper into that, and he looked specifically at the comparison between the human, chimp, gorilla, orangutan, DNA patterns. And of course, the interesting thing about this is that the chimpanzee, gorilla, and orangutan, the prime, the primates, they all have 24 chromosomes, right? But we humans, as you know, have 23. Now, why would we, a more evolved being, have less chromosomes? It doesn't make sense. And of course, he talked to geneticists for quite a while trying to figure this out, and they found the answer. We do have 24 chromosomes. The difference is the 24th chromosome has been basically fused onto our first chromosome. So we have a double stack chromosome as our first, then we have 22 more, therefore giving us 24. So we do have an equal amount. It's just weirdly added. And of course, if you talk to a geneticist privately, they will say that the human DNA absolutely looks manipulated. Now, that's an interesting point, I would say, because this brings in intelligent design in a more direct and radical way. And another thing a geneticist will tell you is even though the human DNA looks manipulated, it looks sloppily done so. Now, that's interesting because I don't know that a god, whatever you choose to call it, would be sloppy. Would it? I don't know. Of course, what this brought Mr. Pi down around to back to his Sitchian roots was the fact that we have the answer. the Sumerians and ancient cultures in their old animistic religions tell us exactly what happened. They're very clear about it. It's the same thing we were talking about the pyramids. We don't know what the pyramids were for. Wow, just the ancient Egyptians did. They said very clearly it was a communication device. They don't listen to them for some reason, I guess. But of course, what it brings it back to us with the Sumerians is that it says in the stories very clearly that the Anunnaki or the Anakim or the Nephilim or whatever you want to call them, the Tuatha De Danann, they took an existing monkey man that was existing on the planet, and they spliced in their DNA onto it. And he goes into a very extensive talk about how would you go about doing that? How would you take an alien DNA and splice it onto an existing special DNA? How do you do that successfully? And of course, if you can combine the fact that this alien DNA has 23 chromosomes and we only have 24, well, the way you accomplish that is by stitching them together, thus for giving the 23 chromosomes of the human, which in truth is kind of a hidden 24 chromosomal structure. But this is what Lloyd Pye gets into. This is what he talks about, and there are just tons of information. And there's videos too. I've seen a couple of video lectures from him but if you're interested in this kind of thing, I strongly suggest you go check out Lloyd Pye because it is fascinating. And one of the things I appreciate about Mr. Pye is the fact that he put in the work. He did the research. It isn't just him pontificating like you hear me doing right now. He went and did the actual work, and I appreciate that. And it's a very compelling argument. Now, in this picture, I chose this one particularly because you see there's a human skull, and then you have the Star Child skull sitting next to it. Now, the Star Child skull is a very interesting thing. I wasn't really prepared to get into it too deeply, but I figured I'd touch it because someone in the chat had mentioned it. The Star Child skull is a very strange thing that was found in a cave in south of the border, it has the structure of the skull. The bone is very tough. It's hard to drill into. It's much tougher than a human skull. They have done DNA testing, and there are a lot of non-human alleles in there. So it's certainly not a human, but although it has parts of human, and of course, Lloyd Pye died before the DNA results came in completely. But he theorized himself that it was a half child, a Nephilim, actually. But this Star Child skull is a very interesting thing. It's very alien and it's real. That's my presentation for today in regards to that. Let me come back over here to the main area with the guys. And what do you think about that? That was a long spiel, but I hopefully it was clear and concise. What do you think about that, Dinelli?
I know that there's been a lot of pushbacks from the scientific community saying that
Mhm.
he's been moving the goalposts, especially with the Star Child project. Basically, there's a lot of claims saying, "Oh, because it was fusion, you're moving the goalposts to say instead of 24 to 23." Um, and they use this odd argument saying, well, there's been new evidence of the Neanderthals and Homo sapiens interbreeding. That's why you have a lot of Homo sapiens immunity genetics in modern humans as well.
Well, actually, that the point that he's showing, which we know,
Mm-hmm.
aside from his comments, actually, it's just genetic fact. There are like what 4,000 impurities in the human DNA. When you compare any animal, there are none. But humans have just a ridiculous amount of errors in their DNA, and who knows when one's going to pop up on you. And we're all born with at least one or two of them, but they just don't necessarily affect us so dramatically. The human DNA is real messy. It's not actually clean. If you go take any animal and check its DNA, it's pristine, it's beautiful. But human DNA is an absolute mess. That argument itself is odd because why should that be? You know what I mean? especially because you would assume that we interbreeding with each other, the strong will survive, because we've only come into this modern age of luxury very recently. If we go back in history, survival of the fittest has been going on throughout human civilization. Whether we like it or not, it has. We might have removed ourselves from the food chain a long time ago, but we certainly not removed ourselves from susceptibility. Yeah.
Well, what about the fact that, or maybe the conspiracy theory
Hmm.
that humans are able to access planes beyond our 3 dimension? Near death experiences, uh, time lapse futures, all these wonderful fantasy things that you would read in comics and fantasy books, but there have been real world recordings of this. Now, do animals experience the same thing that we do?
Mm.
And perhaps maybe um, the difference in our DNA happens to be all centered around our brain, where the majority of our existence actually lies, whether it's the spiritual, the different planes of existence, or just breaking the quantum barrier in atomic
Mm.
structure and all that stuff.
Sure. And of course, you're talking about like ayahuasca and the pineal gland and stuff like that. I don't really get into the esoteric stuff very much, George. I know there's a lot of people who do talk about it. Like I said, Michael Tsarian, he covered a lot of the historical. He's another Sitchian, really. And he's gotten into the esoteric. Graham Hancock started on one side and now is very much into the esoteric, except there are many of them. I don't really I'm not really as interested in the esoteric as other people are. So if you really wanted to create some big presentation on the esoteric or esoteric concepts, you should do that, because it's
Well,
not something I'm personally interested in. Yeah.
well, think about this in another perspective, since you're talking about um, human alien hybrids.
Mhm.
Isn't Lloyd also ascribing to the claim of we're using only 10%, 10-15% of our brains
Um,
as
n-
well?
that's a misnomer, actually.
Mhm,
Our brains function at different speeds for different things, doing various stuff. There's times where your brain is occupied about 8%, as other times it's functioning about 80%. We never see 100% use, but that 10% thing is a misnomer. It's not
mhm,
talking about the actual percentage of your brain you're using at any given time. It's talking about the ratio of potentiality, meaning that, say, we look at IQ is the easiest way to explain it, I guess.
mhm,
But we look at IQ. Now, IQ is set technically on a chart of 1 to 1,000. Right, and this is the 100% use, right? And if you look at the average human worldwide, they use about 90 to 100 points of IQ, so 90 to 100 IQ, depending on the racial group. Now, of course, environment does play a part in it, but there are racial aspects to it. The Asians and some of the Jewish groups are the highest, and the lowest seem to be the mixed races of the Native Americans and the Spanish for some reason. I don't know why that it is, but the environment plays a huge part in it as well. We don't know, it's anywhere between 50 to 80 percent of its actually environment. I tend to lean toward the higher end, personally, but that's a conversation you can't even have these days, which is unfortunate. But if you take that 100 IQ average, right, and therefore you look at the chart, and what you're seeing is they're only using 10% of their potential. Right. If 1,000 is the top and a 100 IQ is what the average is at, you're only using 10%. And so this isn't talking about how much of your brain, your gray matter you're actually using. It's talking about your ultimate potential billions of years in the future or what have you. That's what this 10% is coming from. And it's been misused and misrepresented by Hollywood, of all places.
right.
Yeah.
So, ascribing to that, we don't know what a lot of the date junk, quote unquote, DNA can use for, and people has exhibited talents
Hmm.
or SPS or espers and all that
Yeah.
stuff, where you're either
ESP.
really
Yeah.
ESP, but all these mental health issues as well. Um, could it be that those are part of the genetic manipulations that, as you're ascribing to, or Pylor is ascribing to, is part of the manipulation that's been kind of locked away that maybe they never finished
Well,
because it wasn't meant to be.
it is a fair point, and it actually would be quite the opposite of that. It's
Hmm.
not finished; it's reduced. Because there are several
Yeah.
times in the Bible, which of course we know the Bible, the Torah in particular, it's a very generic, washed down version of the ancient stories, actually, and they did that intentionally because they were imprisoned and enslaved in Babylon, and they were writing down their religious beliefs in what became the Torah, and they hid it. They had to be very generic about it. But if we go back and see the older writings, we get a lot more information. And in actuality, they're like, let's take an example, the Tower of Babel. Okay. Now,
Hmm.
if you read the Tower of Babel reference in the Bible, it's about this. Ooh, they're building a tower to heaven. This it's very generic fantasy looking type of story. But if you read the original story, what you have is an argument between the brothers Enlil and Enki. And Enlil basically thinks that humans should be ruled because they were created as slaves, right? As servants. They should be ruled with an iron fist. That's how you rule slaves. And they're getting out of hand. They're very noisy. We need to do something about this. We need to get it in control. Whereas Enki's like, no, 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 no. We can do it much more subtly. What we need to do is control them through religion and politics and make them think it's what they want to do. This will be a much more successful way. And of course, in the end, it seems Enki was right because that's the world we live in. But this is an argument between them, these two. And of course, in the end, Enlil being the boss, he made a decision to go with what he thought. And there was this basically taking humans and dumbing them down. There are several times in the Bible where humans are actually taken and genetically reduced in order to make them more malleable and controllable. So I would say it's more evidence of that than them simply not being able to get to a higher point, especially when you get into conversations like we had to Wolf in here talking months ago, talking about the fact that we find a lot of giant skeletons around the world, and these skeletons might well be pointing to an earlier time. We know that the oxygen level on the planet used to be much higher. We understand that gravity used to be lower, etc. We know things used to be different, and therefore humans used to be different as well. Adam, for instance, was a giant, a type of giant from our point of view. It's more of looking at a reduction than a simply lack of ability to get to. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Hmm. Anyway, let me see here. I'll try to catch up with the chat real quick. Bigfoot DNA. Yeah, baby. Joe Maroney says, Booster, we're already tired. We already tried it. Ethyl methane sulfonate is an alkaloid agent and a potent mutagen. I created a virus so lethal the subject was dead before he left the table. I don't know what you guys are on about, but awesome. Um, goodness gracious. Monkey see, monkey don't. Walking erect. McCrank. Oh, goodness, you guys. I try to bring a little bit of sophistication to you. What do? You make dick jokes. Awesome. All right, there you go. 24 and me. That's funny, dude. Would God create junk DNA? Oh, wait. It isn't junk DNA. Yeah, Denali touched on that, and we should come back to that in a second. I will do that in a second. Splice with a monolith. Ooh, almost looks like a predator. Truth shall set us free. Let's see. Might be getting ahead, but does any of this lead into Kostler's Ghost in the Machine or the bicameral mind? No, I didn't even prepare to delve into that, dude. Although, if you'd like to, you could come on and delve into that. We'd be happy to have you do so. Let me see here. Best show ever, Busby. Oh, thank you, Yowza. Wow. Biblical stories of genetic documentation, Genesis. Get them out by Friday is about that. Okay. The Torah story is much different when you read the Hebrew and the oral traditions. This is true, Hillel. You and I understand this, whereas I don't know if there's many other here that can read Hebrew, but there is a point to that. I take that. I accept that. Some people throw that away to being a point of arrogance, like when the Muslims say you can't really understand the Quran unless you read it in the original Arabic. Of course, it's not even the original, but nevertheless, I understand the argument for that. But uh, yeah, I get what you're saying, dude. Might be getting ahead, but does any of this lead in? Oh, I already read that. All right. What was the thing he was saying about the oh yeah, the junk DNA.
Yeah.
Triggers. Yes, genetic triggers. The human DNA is quite a mess when it pops up, but there are tons of triggers. Like for instance, here's a trigger that no one wants to talk about because it triggers everybody. Homosexuality is a trigger. It's a mental trigger. We see this throughout the animal kingdom. When their population becomes too big, a trigger goes throughout the genetic continuity of the group, and homosexuality starts showing up, of course. And one of the other triggers that comes along with homosexuality is increased libido as well. That's another trigger that pops on, and of course they go and they create disease. I'm not going to get into why homosexuality creates disease. You can go look that up yourself, but it does have a lot to do with the soft tissue of the rectum. Nevertheless, but homosexuality goes through the animal population. A bunch of them die off either from disease or the other ones getting angry and killing them, and then it brings the population down to a happy point, and that trigger turns off, right? So genetic triggers are things that can come on and off throughout your life, actually, interestingly. Another type of trigger that is maybe more personal is allergies. You can have your whole life never have an allergy, and then a trigger for some reason gets kicked on, and you start having allergies to stuff. It happens, right? And you know the thing with the homosexuality, with humans, we've gone so far beyond the natural order that we can resist the natural decrease of our population because the DNA wants to control our population. It feels it's too big, and it's felt this for I would imagine thousands of years. But we've gone beyond the natural world, so we don't have to follow its rules. Uh, Nick W. It does have to do with the soft tissue of the rectum, Chester 2019. Anyway, but triggers. Do you know anything about triggers, George or Denelli?
All I know is that it makes the frogs gay.
It can, right? You know that thing
Mm.
about Alex Jones that everyone jokes about. It's true. It's a true story, actually. It was at a particularly factory. They were putting out certain chemical combinations that were creating homosexuality within the frog population on the nearby river, estuary, swampy marsh, or whatever it was area. You know, people always laugh at him about that because of his reaction, but it doesn't mean the story wasn't true because it was.
Atrazine is real. It's in the drinking water right now.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, yeah. Of course, it gets us also into fluoride conversations and stuff like that, and how they can affect you. Because fluoride actually is something that will actually reduce your T levels and therefore reduce your ability to have children at higher rates. It actually reduces libido. It works a little bit like saltpeter. Back in the old days in the military. Matter of fact, they might still use it, but they back in the old days they'd use saltpeter with the military because they wanted to control their sexuality. So when they went into a town, they didn't rape everything there. That was intentionally done. You know, they can change sexes, genders. Yes, the frogs can. Amphibians are really good at that, actually. But
Yeah, there's a South African frog that if there's no one gender, they change it to the other gender to keep the population
mhm,
going.
yeah, no, I mean genetics is fascinating. It's amazing what this code can do. And I didn't prepare a presentation on it, but there are many great presentations on DNA on the internet. whether you read them or you watch. I've even seen videos, and it's truly a fascinating thing. The DNA is such a complex structure that the depth of it is ridiculous. I mean, DNA works like this. You have it working, linearly in a linear way, meaning it going from A to B to C to D, right? But DNA also will go from say W back to C to interact with itself. So it's not only working front, it also works back, and it also jumps in and out of itself. But DNA will also wrap around itself and it's interacting with itself in almost a fourth dimensional way. DNA is an amazing structure. We have only touched the surface of understanding what it is and how it does what it does. It's a fascinating conversation. Of course, it's the heart of genetics as well. One of the things that didn't exist when I was a young lad at the university
Hmm.
was genetic anthropology. Now, genetic anthropology has become a big deal now, and I've kept abreast of it as best I can, being outside of the university system. But it is fascinating what they're able to do with that. And if you want to understand anthropology, you need to understand how important teeth are. We love teeth. Teeth are everything. It's a little bundle of joy that protects DNA inside this enamel kernel. It's wonderful.
Right. And Joe says, okay, so DNA helix as the fingerprint of God. We touched upon that as well
Mm,
in 2 weeks ago. I think you mentioned it as well that we
mm.
were talking about the Nakus, where actually, if you look at the DNA, and I think you said this, Chester,
Hmm.
you can correct me if I'm wrong, where basically it looks like somebody has signed their
Oh,
name, yeah,
uh,
on
and
the DNA.
I wonder if Chester remembered to think of that comment he made so long ago and bring it back. He did. He did. Goodness gracious. All right. Here we go. I was waiting for someone to mention it. I've been waiting patiently. The
Mhm.
Yahweh or the YHWH code. Very interesting. Let's take a look at this here. I'm going to read through this article if you don't mind. It's not particularly, I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I am going to get into the meat of it here. If you guys don't mind, just let me read it here. The mapping of the genetic code known as DNA is probably the most important scientific breakthrough of the new millennium. On June 26, 2000, President Clinton and a group of world renowned scientists presented the first genetic map of the human DNA molecule. Clinton called the discovery the language in which God created life. Very nice. Mapping the chemical sequences for human DNA, the chemical letters that make up the recipe of human life, is a breakthrough that is accepted to revolutionize the practice of medicine by paving the way for new drugs and medical therapies, says one website. Of course, they can tailor a cocktail directly for your specific DNA, is what they're talking about, which is pretty cool. This discovery has lasting physical and spiritual implications. A direct link can easily be found between the building blocks of life and the creator of the universe. Mankind is fearful and wonderfully made, with a hidden code within the cell of every life. This code is the alphabet of DNA that spells out the creator's name and man's purpose. Interesting. Science has discovered a map of four DNA bases that carry the ability to sustain life. This gets cool. Listen to this, guys. These bases, known as chromosomes, are paired differently for each person. Human DNA contains 23 pairs of chromosomes made up of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and their acidic counterparts. Encoded with these elements is an amazing blueprint of life that proves the Creator has put his own unique stamp upon every person. This stamp is actually his name as revealed to Moses thousands of years ago, the secret in our DNA. It was from the burning bush that the Almighty revealed his character as the great I am. This name is what am I looking at? This name is the tetragrammaton of the Hebrew letter Yod, He, Wah, He. I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. The Almighty said to Moses, say to the Israelites, YHWH, the mighty one of our fathers, this is my name forever, the name by which I am to be remembered for generations. To generations, Exodus 3, 14, 15. Now, the interesting thing I will drop on that, just so you guys know, the ancient languages, Hebrew and a lot of the old ones, they didn't use vowels as far as writing vowels. They weren't. It was like an assumed use of vowels was more of an assumption. When they wrote things, they wrote consonants only. So that's maybe an important point. Let me see here. Yahweh is used almost 7,000 times throughout the Bible as the only and unique name of the Mighty One of Israel. Isaiah corroborates this. I am Yahweh. That is my name, and my glory will I have not given to another. Okay, okay. Now here we get into the meat of it. Now compare this four-letter name to the four elements that make up human DNA and discover an ancient secret of creation. The key to translating the code of DNA is into a meaningful language as to apply the discovery that converts elements to letters based upon the matching values of atomic mass. Hydrogen becomes the Hebrew letter Yod. Nitrogen becomes the letter He. Oxygen becomes the letter Vav, and carbon becomes the Gimel. These substitutions now reveal that the ancient form of Yahweh's name, Yahweh, exists as a literal chemistry of our genetic code. Through this bridge between Yahweh's name, and the elements of modern science, it now becomes possible to reveal the full mystery and find even greater meaning in the ancient code that lives as each cell of our bodies. Now, this article goes on and on. It goes really deep into it, and I'm not going to read every word of it, but it is fascinating. And if you guys would like to check this out, this is, let's see, jacksonschneider.com, but there's many places. Just look for the Yahweh code, and you will find them talking about it. But it is fascinating that the fact that the name of God is actually seen in the DNA itself. It's a signature, as it were. What do you think about that, George?
It's a stretch.
You think?
Yeah, it's way too obvious.
Okay. I think it's pretty cool. But then again, I have read the article and seen many other articles to getting deep into it, and they get deep into it, dude. I think it's pretty fascinating, actually. I am what I am, Joe says. This guy must be a Christian. He can't be a rabbi. Yeah, I get what you're saying, dude. No vowels, so they talk like Yabba the Hutt, huh? All right. Tree of Life. Oh, sure. I'm back. Went to go see what the boss was talking about. He could be reformed. Um, uh, Hillel. Hillel lives in Israel, guys. If you just wanted to understand what that conversation is about. But yeah, no, I think it's pretty interesting. I find the whole thing of genetic anthropology very fascinating to myself, and I do love how people have taken what Sitchin did, which basically all Sitchin did, Zachariah Sitchin, was he translated the ancient stories into a modern context. That's it. He didn't really spend much time at all giving his opinion on what he thought it was. He did write the last book of Enki, which is a fantasy, which he wrote, I guess, to kind of give his opinions, I suppose. But that's the one thing that I find funny when people yell and scream at Sitchin or about Sitchin. The dude was never telling you what was what. He's simply translating what the ancients thought, and people get upset about it, particularly Christians. But I do love how people have taken what Sitchin had written and have gone great distances with it, like Lloyd Pye. So, now, what was your genetic point again, George? Could you bring it up again?
The immortal gene.
The immortal gene. All right. Well,
Yeah,
I keep
that
forgetting not to
exists.
share with you guys. Let me share with you
That
guys. What am I
that
doing here?
exists within. I think it's an octopi. But it also exists within the human condition. It's been
Hmm.
discovered. I think it's less than 10 people so far, and the discovery only came about because they're doing the genetic testing in mass in all the military, uh, what do you call, regiments, or what do you call armies, all the armies in the world, because they are a captive group, and so they can do it mandatory without having anyone to say no to it. But now, how do they expand that to the rest of the population in the world? They're using, hey, wouldn't you be happy to find out what your genetic code is and where you come from and all that stuff? And at the same time, they'll actually look for that immortal gene.
I see. So what they're doing is they want to get the 23andMe, which is a huge project. Like I said, is gaining for, it's gaining for scientific means. And this place wants you to give that information here because they're looking for the immortal gene themselves.
Well,
Okay.
23andMe is part of the globalists. It's funded by the globalists, specifically Soros, I believe.
Yeah, I've heard this argument before. I don't think I agree with it though, George, because I know people who are involved in the project, dude. And I know now you could say, well, their superiors have alternative motives, and that may be true. But the people involved in the project are actually doing it simply to try to get a collection of human DNA as broad as they can, so that we can understand how DNA interacts with each other, and have a better understanding. The people involved in the project on the ground, it has nothing to do with that. For them, it's raw science, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, a ticket collector at a public transit is only there to just take your money so that you can pass through. Uh, but hey, the guy who's actually driving the bus wants to send you to a place not of this world.
No, maybe. Matthew says, Chester Busby. So the Mormon church is involved? I knew it. Well, the Mormons are always involved, dude. Better watch your back. They have spies everywhere. The Clonus horror objective. I'm trying to find more information on it here, George. What is the immortality gene? All right, let's see what Yahoo Answers has to say. No, stop it. Let's see here. Best answer. The immortality gene is a gene which codes from pluripotency in stem cells. Theoretically, if this gene could be controlled or manipulated, it would be possible to rejuvenate any and all cells in the body because every cell, no matter how old or damaged, could regenerate, including cells that would be unrenewable, such as neurons in the brain. Okay. I get it. I've heard about it before. I just haven't heard it used as the immortality gene. I've just heard it used in other ways. The interesting thing is about that is the fact that aging. We actually know why we age now. This is I thought was a pretty impressive discovery that nobody talked about. These news shows, they just don't like talking about science. I don't understand why. It's important, but we know exactly why we age now. On the end of each DNA strand is a little cap. And there's four of them, right? And the little caps are called telomeres. And these telomeres, they are getting bombarded by the sun, all day long, of course. Well, at least half the day long. And what happens is the sun, over time, degrades these caps, and as that goes by, it starts unraveling the DNA. And this is what aging is. It's the unraveling of your DNA. This is why you sag and get wrinkly and all these kind of things happen, because your DNA as a whole, your telomeres caps are starting to degrade. And there's a big focus right now in science trying to find a way to regenerate your telomeres. If they can regenerate those caps and make them tighter again, it's equivalent to you taking your shoelace that has had the little plastic ring come off the end of it, and you taking some tape and taping it back down and it working again. It's the same effect, right? And therefore, of course, it would make you young again, or at least stop you aging, I suppose. But it is very interesting that the sun is something we desperately need to survive, but yet at the same time, it is killing us. And this, I would assume, is playing part in this immortality gene research, or maybe not. I don't know. Telo
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The telomeres.
Telomeres,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, it
Did I
is,
say
and
telometers? I bet you I did.
it
Telomeres. I
is.
do apologize.
And interesting and interesting thing is, let's just set aside Alex Jones as the nutcase that everyone thinks it is. his actual store, the Infowars store, has something called DNA Force, which actually addresses the telemeter situation.
Hmm.
And what is absolutely baffling is that scientists have already recognized the aging process and the destruction of the telemeters, and they have an actual solution. And the solution, this product that Alex Jones is selling, DNA Force, is the strongest, most potent product available.
Hmm.
Is this is what's baffling to me, is that there's a similar products out there that are cost lots more, but they're watered down, and it goes back to the conspiracy uh, in a roundabout way of all this stuff that's going on with the genetics, is that we have solutions to our problems,
Hmm.
but it all is constantly watered down. And I like to add to this conspiracy of the genetics is that I think it's called vitamin D. It
Yeah,
has it has a different measurement than all the other vitamins. And why is that?
I don't know.
Why do they? Well, there is a reason, because if you get actually a proper dosage of vitamin D, um, you will live a long and healthy life. And so they watered down, or they masked the proper dosage in a completely different scale,
Uh-huh.
where you do not take the proper dosage at all.
Right. Well, it is interesting when you talk about that about other things because we do have monoatomic silver and gold or colloidal silver,
Oh, and
and
silver. Oh
yeah,
my
these
God! Yes,
things will
absolutely.
make you healthier. Now, if that is true, though, George, then what does that say about the Northern Celts, like myself? We not the Southern Celts or not the Southern Whites or any other human on the planet, but the North Celts. We create our own vitamin D. We don't
Yeah.
actually need the sun at all, technically, because we do produce. Because vitamin D is usually produced by exposure to the sun, right? But the northern Celts don't need it because we actually produce our own vitamin D. What does that say?
Well, it goes back to the opening high thesis in this entire show is we got a haphazard DNA structure, and it's messy compared to what the animals are, and within the messy system of our genome, some things can be triggered on, some things can be triggered off,
Mm,
and certain people are blessed with special abilities that everyone can have, but only a few actually portray them. For instance, perfect memory, um,
mm.
uh, having that natural production of vitamin D. Others,
Yeah.
I could have hair as beautiful as Fabio, while others are completely bald.
Actually, the eidetic memory that you mentioned, there's an argument whether that actually is a thing or not. But I do know with myself, I have near eidetic memory, actually, in certain ways. And in other ways, my memory is very normal. I don't know why. But the eidetic memory thing is interesting. I've never met anyone with a true eidetic memory, though. I've only met people at varying levels, whether they be higher than me or lower than me. But it is very useful having eidetic memory because it allows you to take tests and stuff a lot better. It's easier. You know what I mean? I don't
True.
know if it helps in life, but it helps in tests anyway.
The logical extension to the perfect memory is
Mm,
that uh, it would seem that every human on the planet has the ability to have perfect memory. But
mm,
if you really extrapolate that, if everyone had perfect memory, they would actually go insane, because the recall is constant. So the reason why we forget is so we can flush out all the information
that's a
that
good
we
point.
don't need for the moment to survive.
And also
Because
painful things as well.
your
Yeah,
brain subconsciously
yeah, that's true.
is running your body,
Hmm.
and if your brain is working on memories, all that brain power is going to go from your heart to your breathing. It will start to spatter and sputter,
Yeah. Well,
The
that actually brings up a couple of thoughts in my head, but let me come over here and catch up in the chat real quick because there are some interesting things here. Joe says sun's killing us here in Philly today, 115 degrees. Damn, dude. The Yowza said the Illuminati will use this, dude. I don't think they need our help at all. Eric Hawkins says that little plastic piece on a shoelace is the aglet. Well, thank you very much for that useless piece of information. I'm full of useless information. You and I could make a team. Uh, I'll get activated with the. Okay, let me see here. Matthew said, Chester, when I was in the military, moving every 3 years because of transfers, the Mormon church always knew where I lived. I grew up Mormon, and my mom is still in the church. Well, dude, they keep tabs on stuff, dude. I do know that they knew the Baptist church, the Northern Baptist church. I grew up and knew where I was too, because when I was in Hawaii, I got sent a letter, and they said we haven't seen you in a really long time. Therefore, we're taking you off we're taking you off the boards or charts or whatever they call it. I was no longer a member of the church, even though I was literally born in that church. Anyway. Joe says, "What does it say about Northern Celts? It says that genetics doesn't care about longevity of the individual, only the perpetuation of the genes. Those damn selfish genes, right?" As Doctor Who says, our superpower is forgetting. That's why we keep having babies. Ha ha ha. Okay. I love babies, by the way. Uh, it takes training to develop your memory. You can choose to forget, though. Yeah, no, I think that's a really fair point. I think the point that the eidetic memory is trying to make, though, is some people can remember, can use those techniques more effectively than others, right? Because just because you can't say that, oh, I have a photographic memory, therefore I don't have to do any work. No, no, no. You have to work. It just makes it a little easier, I think, is the argument. I could get into all of that, but into the science of what Krebs is and how we make memories, but I won't. If I couldn't forget the pain of kidney stones, I'd be insane. Yeah, no, kidney stones, right? I'm glad I've never had one. Knock wood. I will put this in for one a comic story. Thank you, Yowza. I thought you were saying something about the weather in Philly. Sorry, no. I would just that sucks, dude. 115 degrees. That's hot. Northern Celts are Highlanders. Lol. Barbecued or fried, Chester. Barbecued. Yeah, I love babies. Chester 2019. What's wrong with babies? You have a problem with babies? I'll fight you. I'm going to do a booster thing. I'll fight you for it. Babies are awesome. But some people can't say them, I suppose. But what I wanted to mention since one of the things that came in my mind, George, when you were making your point, was the fact that I'm sure I'm going to go back. Actually, I don't know how much more we're going to go back over, but um, what came to my mind, George, is the experiments that are being done recently, actually, where you have scientists in Europe and in Asia as well who are taking in laboratory conditions beakers full of water, and understand this water is pure water. There's no contaminants or matter in them at all, other than them being H2O. It's laboratory conditions, right? And what they're doing is they're using various forms of sound in a orchestra, with multiple layers of sound and stuff like that. And what they're starting to be able to do is they're starting to be able to produce DNA in the water. The sound is literally creating DNA out of nothing, right? Now, it's not necessarily functioning DNA because they obviously haven't got the frequencies yet, but they're getting DNA fragments that are showing up out of this water from simply the use of sound. This is just one of the most mind-boggling, amazing scientific bits of information that nobody is talking about. I cannot understand how CNN, Nova, NBC, BBC, NHK, whatever, all over the world are not everybody talking about this and delving into it. I don't understand. Give them $10 billion to delve into that, please. Right? No comments. Wow. See, this is the problem with the world. Nick says, "Oh no, not the DNA in the water again." Dude, you don't think that is absolutely fascinating what they're doing in that science right now? You don't think that's amazing that they're literally creating DNA out of nowhere with just sound? You don't think that is amazing? I do. George has no opinion whatsoever. Denali has gone for a dog walkabout, I'm sure. Eric,
I'm just watching you crumble and self destruct.
why? How is that crumbling or self-destructing? You don't think that's
Oh,
amazing?
it's okay. You know, it's nothing to write home about.
Wow. All right, fine.
I've seen better effects in Endgame.
Yeah, George, this is real science, dude. I know you
Yeah,
like to argue against that kind of stuff.
I totally dig it. I do.
All
I
right,
just can't
fine.
find the
Fine.
humor in it because it's
Sarcasm. All
too
right, I get
serious.
it.
There's just it's so beyond the realm of fantasy and preposterous, and it's real, and it's just mind-boggling. I mean, it's like holding what do you call it, a Star Trek communicator in the 1960s, but it's real today.
It
I mean,
is, yeah. Of
this
course,
this is how
smartphones, yeah.
profound what you just said. This is how profound it is.
I guess, although the chat's not taking it very seriously. Maybe that's why no one's covering it, because no one will believe it. I suppose. Let's see. Eric Hawkins says, I don't know what I have, but I can recall where pictures or anything is on a page in a book or a magazine, and some other stuff I can recall with uncanny accuracy. I think everybody has this sporadic type of memory depending on the individual. We all learn in different ways, right? Some people learn visually or in an auditory manner better. Some are better at simply reading it. We all learn more effectively in different ways. I think it's all attached. I think everyone has some manner of eidetic memory in one way or the other, unless there's simply brain damage, I suppose. But the total pure eidetic memory, I don't think has ever been found before. The true photographic memory, I don't think exists. Some people have an incredible talent for it and can train it into incredible levels. I personally use the library system for myself, and it works really, really well. But then at the other hand, I never library people's names, and I never remember names. Right. So what does that mean? It's obviously more technique than it is genetic, I suppose. Eric says, Chester, I would like to hear more about DNA in the water, please. Well, you know what? I'm going to go and I'll put together a presentation on it, and I will give you all that information, places you can go see the studies, et cetera, et cetera. I'll do that. I'll take some time and put that together. Let's see here. Yowza Comics says photographic memory is connected to OCD. I think, man, it might be. I know for me personally, I can't stand when things are not straight. I really can't. So what I do intentionally is I make things crooked around me, and it irritates and irks the hell out of me. But I do it to keep myself from being stupid. But I can't stand when things aren't straight. It bothers my brain. Is this what you mean? How about you, George? Can you handle messes?
Yeah, I can. I purposely make everything I do around me a mess. It drives my family crazy.
Oh, I
It,
see.
it it's my little bit of entertainment.
Well, you know my wife does, George, is pretty funny. She her sense of humor. Um, she'll like bring over a coffee or a cup of water or a glass of water or something like that. Whether I ask for it or not, she just kind of doing her thing. And she'll bring it over, but she'll walk right past me and go all the way over the table and put it on the table. So I got to get up and get it, right? It's like, she thinks it's hilarious, and it's like, why? What's the point? I can make it myself if you'd prefer. But then at the same time, when I go in the kitchen and try to do something, she's like, get out of the kitchen. Rah, 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 rah. Women can't stand you in the kitchen, right? But, I don't know. Anyway, whatever. Uh, I can't stand when things are not straight. Chester 2019. That's right, Nick. You can't you can't stand homosexuals. Don't really care about homosexuals, to be honest with you. I think there's some good humor to be had there, but I don't really care. I do think it's interesting when you mentioned that comment that Poland has come out and publicly, governmentally stated that homosexuality is not needed in Poland, for it destroys the family and the state. So Poland has taken a stand against homosexuals. It's interesting, as if the rest of Europe didn't hate him enough. Good on him, I guess. I can't sing when things are straight. Yeah. Denali says, please hit the like button. Oh, okay. The question definitely not Eagle 43. I was too slow. I've done both Denali. I hit them again. Okay, well, thank you very much. All right, well, anyway, we are in an hour and 15 minutes here. We only had the two presentations to go over. I tried to stretch it out as much as I could, but unfortunately, I thought we were going to have a couple more people in here with a couple more genetic, theories or conspiracy theories to talk about. But that's
I
all right.
mean, yeah. I mean, I was seeing how long you were going to stretch it out.
I was just
Because
trying to stretch it, but I think I'm done. Yeah.
right, because we have the GMO conspiracy. I don't really have any slides for that, which is dealing with more towards China, which is they're
Mm.
refusing any food that has GMO because they think it's a biological weapon set by United States, which is
Well,
actually causing them not to feed, and it's becoming like a rest issues for the Chinese government
it's
as well.
interesting. Well, the Japanese are actually kind of pushing back against GMOs as well.
Mhm.
I think it's a scary thing. I think you're dealing with stuff that we don't truly understand, and therefore mistakes can be made. I think a lot of fear is around that. I think the general concept of GMO is simply to try to make a stronger food source for the planet. But it is
That's
touchy.
false. That's false. 2/3 of the food that is produced always ends up being put back to waste because
Yep.
every one of us who is a connoisseur of going to the shopping mall or the supermarket or the grocery store would like to get that perfect apple or that perfect tomato. Everything has got to be perfect, but you know what? A slightly blemished apple or slightly blemished tomato is still as good and viable as the perfect presentation.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
2/3 of the food gets wasted,
Yeah.
and
You're
now
talking
and now
about
and now and now.
You're talking about American exceptionalism, dude. If you
Yeah,
go to other places in the world, if they could grow a larger tomato or a larger wheat plant, it would benefit them a lot. You have to take America out of this scenario. You really do. But I get what you're saying. I get the whole perfection thing, marketing thing. I get that. It is behind it. You're right. But for me, I never eat GMO. I never do. Because we always eat fresh vegetable. It's very rare I take anything out of a can or a box. It's super rare. And all the food I get is local, and there's no GMO here whatsoever.
well, up here we had almost a scandal going on. Tim Hortons is starting to use this new fake meat
Uh-huh.
in their menus, and people got very upset. I've stopped going to their.
What's a soy meat or something like that?
Well, it's meat that's supposed to taste and look and bleed like meat. I mean, but
Wow, that's creepy.
but when you look at the ingredients that make up this fake meat, there's no red ingredient. So how the heck does a fake meat actually bleed red? That
Well, yeah, I know
straight.
what they're trying to do. They're trying to, but then again, this is part of the United Nations agenda, dude. One of their things that the United Nations is pushing, other than the tax you for breathing, which is the carbon tax, global warming, yeah. But one of the other things they're trying to do is remove meat from the world's diet. And everyone eating vegetable matter. This is part of the UN agenda for sure, dude. And it's not. This isn't
It's
a
insane.
secret, hidden agenda, guys. This is written down,
It's
actually.
insane. You
Yeah.
you actually remove meat from your diet, you're going to go and start spending more money on pills,
Oh, yeah. Which is
so you
what
can
they
get
want you to
that
do.
that natural
Yeah.
uh, ingredients that the meat actually has. And after 3 to 4 years, your body's going to deteriorate to such a state. If you
Yeah.
don't eat meat, you're going to die. That's the
But
fact that no vegetarian is actually telling you this.
right, particularly Celts, we suffer the most from that. But every human on the planet needs a little bit of meat sometimes. But you also can make the argument we eat way too much meat. We don't need that. We really don't need that much. If you had a little piece of meat once a week, you're fine, right? But I
Yeah,
eat meat
exactly.
every day. Almost every day. Meddling in things was not meant to be meddled in. Okay. Lady Catholic Moon. Hey, sorry I'm late. Let's see here. Wait, we're talking genetics and we're not going to talk about the Dr. Moreau freak show that is the Cats trailer? Yeah, right. That was a freaky, freaky trailer. And it got me a copyright strike too. Nick W says the real TFT is in 2015. All new, all different Marvel was created by Disney to prepare the way for MCU Phase 4. Yep. Yep, and they do think of things ahead of time, by the way. But all agriculture is GMO in essence. Yes, I get your point, Joe. It is a matter of breeding and hybridization and stuff like that. Sure, sure, sure. But I think what they're talking about more particularly is the direct scientific genetic manipulation of the cells, right? Not simply breeding one more robust form of tomato with a less robust one. But I get your point. Yeah, yeah. The prawn don't waste food at all. They eat cat food. Okay, that's a District 9 comment. Nice. Tim Hortons love me some Timbits. I have no idea what Tim Hortons is. It's some Canadian thing. Damn it. Future Moot will be grown in a vat. They already are growing them in a vat, dude. I'm being told too much meat can cause kidney stones. No, actually, what causes kidney stones is not having enough water in your body. If you allow yourself to run it near dehydration in long periods, it creates the stones. If you don't want to have kidney stones, drink a lot of water all the time, like you're supposed to. You need to be putting a lot more water in your body than you are if you're having that trouble. Now, some people have a genetic issue, but in general, that's the truth. Bacon tastes good. Pork chop tastes good. Yeah, I agree. Eric Hawkins. Anyway, I think we've beaten this to death for today. We could. Someone was mentioning coming in and talking about the Chinese, some kind of Chinese genetic cloning, something or another. Or
The
there's tons.
CRISPR.
Huh?
That was Tank Fair. The CRISPR.
Oh, the CRISPR, yeah.
Yep.
But there's tons of things we could talk about, and we'll definitely do another genetic show. Maybe I should present. Maybe I should always prepare two or three things just in case. But nevertheless, very happy to have you guys with us, man. It was a lot of fun. We enjoy doing these TFTs. It's just good conspiracy theory talks, just talking about nothing for fun. I'm having a great time with it. Hope you guys are as well. I'm not sure what we'll do next week, but we'll find some kind of subject. Maybe we'll try to get a guest like we did with Ben Henderson. That was fun. But nevertheless, thank you very much. And our week is about to start. So, Denali, lay it down, man.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for TFT tonight. Join my newsletter for the Immortal Mass project that I'll eventually unveil once it's ready at dinalescomic@gmail.com. It's the links down below. Just send me an email, say I want to join your newsletter, and you'll be joined. Join us tomorrow for Comics News Today at 9 p.m. Eastern to get our California's friends and the West Coast friends to be participating with us. Tuesday, we have Bugbear Basement as we continue our our Vampire the Masquerade Gehenna Rising campaign. We'll see if we'll survive, if common sense will prevail, or if we'll be stumped stupid like last time.
Yeah.
Then follow Comics News Today on Wednesday at the regular time at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by Blacklist Universe on in Quarter Pro Edition. Who's the champion going there, Chester?
What'd you say?
For this, who's the champion going?
I
For
do
that
believe
Wednesday?
Cassidy. Cassidy won,
Cassidy.
and he's going in. Great piece he did. It was absolutely killer. Kind of bubblegum crisis, a little bit of dirty pair look for Niobe. It was nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, go support him. I think this is his first outing for the Pro Edition. I believe
Maybe. It might be his second, but
second.
maybe
Yeah.
it's his first or second. Yeah, but he's a great artist, so he'll do fine.
Awesome. Then again on Comics News Today on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Fan Edition. You guys have a theme for that one, or is that to be determined still?
No, I don't know. Let me check real quick. And I'm pretty sure it should be scheduled. Let me see here. Oh, Mary Sue.
The Mary Sue.
Hmm.
So we talked to George, look
We
at
did.
our past interview with him, support Mary Sue. This campaign's still going, and help him get to his goal.
Sure.
And then Friday we are off. Nothing, no shows, nothing. We're all going to take a break, and then we'll come right back on Saturday for our next fan speak, and then Sunday for TFT. And thank you, everybody. As always, your perception shapes your reality, so always make it a good one.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Later, guys.
Aloha.